Meghan Markle's shocking humiliation in Geneva finally proves that she has just gone mad.
Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Scamalot, she has taken her scams abroad again. This time she seemed to be flying solo. I guess she left Prince Harry at home. He's probably so happy.
I mean, the fact that she's literally standing in the middle of these empty streets and no one even gives a damn really does tell you something about the way that the public feel about this woman. And then you get to the content, which just goes completely against her own social media use, let alone the fact that the bloke behind all of this is Dr. Tedros, a very, very bad man.
Tom Sykes is one of the only working journalists who actually flew into Geneva that weekend, and what he found was explosive. He had a column posted at 4:57 on a Sunday morning, hours before Meghan walked on stage at the World Health Organization. His 3-word verdict on the photograph she had posted the night before. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. The photo in question, a mirror selfie of her 4-year-old daughter Lilibet, crouched inside a closet packed with designer clothing. Sykes anchored his argument to something Harry had said on a podcast in Los Angeles last October. The quote, and we will get to it, is the part of this story that most British coverage has been quietly tiptoeing around. Now, before anyone jumps in saying Meghan has every right to post her own daughter, hold on, because Sykes never said she doesn't. He wrote something sharper.
Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, has just scored what I think is an astonishing own goal, an incredible sign of her hubris and arrogance. She has posted a photograph of Lilibet on her social media platform to 4.5 million people the night before she is due to give a massive speech about the harms of social media in Geneva.
He wrote that not showing a child's face does not stop that child from becoming a social media star. If anything, he wrote, it manufactures a curiosity gap. And then came the line that hit different: a 4-year-old cannot meaningfully consent to having their image broadcast to millions of strangers. This is the story of those 19 hours between the photograph and the speech, the journalist who watched both, and what is hiding inside that closet. Now, the setting. Sunday, May 17th. Place des Nations, Geneva. The square sitting right across from the European headquarters of the United Nations, just up the road from the iconic broken chair sculpture that has stood there since 1997. The World Health Assembly was opening the very next morning, and the World Health Organization had invited Meghan to open something called the Lost Screen Memorial. The memorial, 50 illuminated light boxes, each shaped like a smartphone.
An amazing opportunity for Meghan, right? And what does she do? Hours before this vital event, Meghan chooses to post a photograph of herself, smirking, basically, wearing this kind of very fancy lilac outfit, with Lilibet sort of crouched at her feet, sort of worshipping her, oh, mummy, you look so beautiful, you look so gorgeous.
Each one displaying the lock screen photo and the time of passing of a child whose family says they lost them to harm linked to social media, cyberbullying, grooming, harmful content the algorithm kept pushing until it no longer had to. 50 children, 50 families. Those families flew in from around the world to stand around that square that evening. And this is where the story gets complicated, because the World Health Organization fully embraced her that weekend. The Director General, Dr. Tedros, introduced her himself. He thanked her for her leadership. The very next day, he handed her a field vest and said on the record that it was a gesture of his regard for her commitment to promoting and protecting people's health. So let's be clear, the cause is real, the endorsement is real. Whatever comes next, those two facts stay on the table. Meghan walked to that podium in a black Giorgio Armani trouser suit, hair pulled back in a low bun. On her wrist, Princess Diana's gold Cartier Tank Française, the same watch Diana wore, the one Meghan has been wearing for some years now. Then she opened her mouth and delivered the speech. These were her exact words, straight from the World Health Organization's own published transcript. She said, advancing technologies like AI are not just repeating past mistakes, they are accelerating and amplifying them. The speech was good. The cause is real. 50 families standing in that square that all stays on the table. The question was never whether the speech was good. The question is whether the speech belonged with the person giving it. That was the rhetoric. Here is the reality.
And the problem that I have, particularly with this now, or not my personal problem, but why I just think it's incredibly unwise of this couple to do this, is that increasingly at the center of this commercial operation is Lilibet. She is increasingly the cheese, the bait, the whatever you want to call it, to draw people into these photographs.
Saturday night in Montecito, roughly 8 hours before Meghan boarded the plane to Switzerland, she opened her Instagram and posted a photograph. The child's face is not visible. Back of the head, red ponytail, no profile caught in the mirror. The Sussex camp protects faces. They did it here too. Sykes is the journalist who flew in, one of the only ones. He had his column up before Meghan even had her shoes on, and he used those 3 words. He called it a tone-deaf image. Daily Beast, the Royalist column, Sunday morning timestamp. We are saying it twice because the clock matters. Saturday the post, Sunday the speech. That order is on the record. The reason behind it is not. Now, look at that photograph again, at what is actually in the frame, because this photograph is not just a photograph. It is part of an operation, a Giorgio Armani blazer hanging on the rail with the label clearly visible, Dior Dioressence pumps on the floor, Manolo Blahnik BB heels right next to them, dozens of pieces packed on the rails behind. The mirror reflects even more. Sykes did the full inventory and he put a number on what was visible in that wardrobe. Close to $250,000, he wrote, in one single Instagram frame. A closet that costs more than a Brisbane bungalow, with a 4-year-old crouched inside it for the photograph.
Nobody's there, so why does Meghan Markle need security? There's a street with cars behind her, no crowds, people walking by, not caring. Nobody cares about what Meghan Markle had to say. She posts her own kids online.
Now, stay with this for a moment, because this is where the receipts arrive. The @Meghan Instagram account crossed 4 million followers weeks ago. The most recent measurement from Hype Auditor in May puts it at 4,567,837. Comments are disabled. The account does not allow public replies. Sykes describes it as a public-facing shop window, his words, to the lifestyle brand. As ever, he writes that the @Meghan account and the @AsEver account work in tandem. And here is where it gets interesting. On March 6th of this year, Variety reported that Netflix had exited As Ever as an investor. The piece, written by Matt Donnelly, stated that Netflix had paid for the manufacturing, the shipping, and the branding of As Ever, and reportedly ended up giving unsold inventory to its own employees. The brand, Variety said, would continue standing on its own. So step back and look at the full picture. Netflix is no longer funding the brand. As Ever now has to drive its own traffic. The @Meghan account, 4.5 million followers. Comments disabled sits one tap away from the As Ever storefront. Sykes says the two work in tandem, and that Saturday night photograph.
Now, of course, there is a reason why this speech was so disgusting. And I'm going to get into the details of it, by the way, because she is using the grieving parents again of young people who have taken their own lives, while at the same time doing the exact thing she claims has led to these deaths. Did you see this over the weekend?
Posted into that account shows a young child in front of dozens of designer pieces on a rail. That is the operation Sykes is describing, and at the center of it, he writes, increasingly, is Lilibet. There is one more piece of context the broadsheets have been quietly noting. Earlier this spring, As Ever briefly displayed product-sized charts on its website that some observers screenshotted as a possible children's apparel line in development. The charts were pulled within days. The watching is already happening. Royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams said something similar on GB News this week. The habit, he said, of photographing their children from behind so their faces are not revealed is, and this was his word, very curious. The face is protected. The brand window is not. Now the part Sykes anchored his entire column to, the part most British coverage has been quietly stepping over, the part that has been sitting on Harry's own podcast feed since October. Last year, Harry sat down with comedian Hassan Minhaj on his podcast, a show called Hassan Minhaj Doesn't Know.
Seriously, these two are living in a parallel universe, a universe of delusion. And this is again another example of Meghan trying to cosplay Diana, very obviously. But she's done nothing for our health. Actually, she's probably been very bad for our mental health around the world, if we're honest, because she just annoys us all so much.
They were talking about social media, and Harry did not hold back. He said social media operates in lawlessness. He said there is no free will on social media as it stands. He said the people at the heart of it want to farm children's mindsets and market it for themselves. And he used 2 words for the people running those platforms: really evil, wicked. The platform Harry was describing is owned by Mark Zuckerberg. And that Saturday night photograph of Lilibet went up on that exact platform 7 months after Harry sat on a microphone and called the people running it evil and wicked. The speech in Geneva is the rhetoric. The closet photograph is the reality. Tom Sykes wrote that line, and we are repeating it because no other line in this story lands harder. She told the world to look away from the screen from a post she had just told the world to look at. That is the moment the loop closes. The husband calls social media evil. His wife uses that exact platform to place their young daughter in front of a closet worth $250,000. The night before her speech, she stood before the World Health Organization and said, "Children must be safe by design." So the framing question, the one this story has been building toward, has an answer now. Whether the messenger believes the message is a question the messenger's own household has been answering on the record since October.
Children today are being shaped by systems designed to capture attention at absolutely any cost.
That's crazy.
Relentless algorithms, exploitative engagement, and endless exposure to harmful content that they are not seeking out.
Sorry, I'm just obsessed with the 2 women standing behind her about to cross the road. And they don't even bother to wait. They don't even bother to wait to the end.
One last thing, and this part matters. Lilibet is 4 years old. She did not choose this. She is a child. The 50 children whose lock screen photos are lit up on those smartphone-shaped light boxes in Place des Nations did not choose what happened to them either. Their families are real. Their grief is real. The cause the Lost Screen Memorial exists to advance is one that deserves to be taken seriously. What Saturday night changes is the messenger, and whether this message is truly for parents, or whether it is for the platform she is using to sell something. 5 days before Meghan walked on stage in Geneva, she had just wrapped a 2-day trip to Reggio Emilia in northern Italy, and the reception she received there was nothing short of remarkable. The mayor of Reggio Emilia presented her with the Primo Tricolore, one of the city's highest civic honors, in recognition of her work on early childhood development. The square was packed with people, flags out, cameras rolling. A full civic moment, the kind that does not happen for just anyone who passes through a northern Italian town. This was not a courtesy visit. This was a formal recognition from a government body that took her advocacy seriously enough to put it on the public record.
The risks are compounding. We are seeing new forms of harms emerge faster than our systems and ourselves are prepared to respond, affecting children at alarming scale and across borders.
And that detail matters because it adds another layer to the week Meghan was having. In the span of just a few days, she collected a civic honor in Italy, flew into Geneva, opened a memorial dedicated to children harmed by social media, delivered a speech endorsed by the Director General of the World Health Organization, and stood in a square surrounded by 50 grieving families whose losses were real, documented, and devastating. By any measure, that is a full week, a serious week, the kind of week that, on paper, builds a legacy. So where does this leave us sitting here on a Tuesday morning, with the Lost Screen Memorial still standing in Place des Nations until Friday, and that Instagram photograph still sitting on the @Meghan grid for 4.5 million people to scroll past on their way to wherever they are going? That is the question this whole story has been circling, and the answer is uncomfortable no matter which side of it you land on. Because here is what we actually have on the record. We have a woman who flew to Italy to accept an honor for her commitment to children. We have a woman who then flew to Geneva to open a memorial for children harmed by social media.
Children must be saved by design, not saved by chance.
This is such a crazy thing to say.
Because danger now travels globally,
Wow.
instantly,
Woof.
invisibly,
What?
and intimately.
Stop it.
And our protections must do the same.
We have a woman who stood at a podium in front of world health leaders and said in words published on the WHO's own transcript that children must be protected by design, not by chance. And we have a woman who, the night before that speech, posted a photograph of her 4-year-old daughter inside a closet stacked with designer clothing, estimated by a working journalist at close to $250,000 in value, posted on the exact platform her own. Husband publicly described as being run by people he called really evil, wicked just 7 months earlier. Both of those things are true. Both of them are documented. Both of them belong to the same person, and the Sussex camp has offered no explanation connecting them, no statement addressing the contradiction, and no response to the column Tom Sykes published in the Daily Beast at 4:57 on Sunday morning before Meghan had even stepped on stage. The silence from the Sussex camp is not a small thing.
Not tell parents to create their own seatbelts. We did not ask children to test unsafe medicine.
What are you talking about?
We did not shrug at poisoned water or defective toys and call it the price of progress.
What the f*** are you saying?
We acted, and now the world must act again.
When a working journalist flies into Geneva specifically to cover your event, publishes a piece before your speech even begins, uses the words breathtaking hypocrisy in his headline, and the response from your team is absolute quiet that silence is a strategic choice. Communications teams at that level do not miss columns. They read everything. The decision not to respond is made deliberately, and it tells you something about how the camp has calculated the risk of engaging versus the risk of letting it sit. What it does not tell you is whether the calculation is correct, because the column did not disappear. It is still there. The timestamp is still there. And now it is sitting inside a wider story that is moving across platforms in ways that comment-disabled Instagram accounts cannot control. Now the @Meghan account itself deserves a closer look, because it is not a personal account in the traditional sense, and has not been for some time. With 4,567,837 followers as of May's Hype Auditor measurement, comments disabled, and a content strategy that Sykes describes as a public-facing shop window to the lifestyle brand. This is infrastructure. This is not someone sharing family moments.
Meghan posted Mama's Little Helper with the so-called daughter there, maybe shining her shoes, but very much part of the merch sheen operation, because at the front of the shot was the Armani dress and black shoes that Meghan would wear to the event.
This is a curated commercial pipeline with an audience the size of a mid-sized country's population, and every post that goes into it is a decision made by people who understand exactly what they are doing. The photograph of Lilibet was not a casual snap. The label on the Giorgio Armani blazer was visible. The Dior pumps were on the floor. The Manolo Blahniks were next to them. The rails behind were packed. The mirror reflected even more. Sykes counted. He put a number on it. $250,000 visible, documented, in a single frame. That is not an accident of composition. That is a photograph that was taken, reviewed, selected, and posted by a team that knew exactly what was in it. And here is the part that makes it more complicated, not less the more you sit with it. As ever, the lifestyle brand connected to the @Meghan account lost Netflix as an investor earlier this year. Variety reported it in March. Matt Donnelly's piece laid it out. Netflix had been covering manufacturing, shipping, and branding costs. When Netflix stepped back, the brand had to generate its own momentum. The @Meghan account, sitting one tap away from the As Ever storefront, became even more critical as a traffic driver the moment that funding disappeared. So the commercial pressure around that account increased in the weeks leading up to Geneva. The follow account needed to keep climbing.
Hypocrisy absolutely breathtaking. I felt that it was such a tone-deaf image.
She posted this weird picture getting ready to leave for the event on cyberbullying, and the whole event was about protecting your kids from social media, and I guess she doesn't see the hypocrisy that she's posting her kid on social media on a dirty floor in a closet. And as someone who spent the first half of my life in a closet, no judgment, but I don't understand what's going on in this damn photo.
The engagement, even without public comments, needed to stay active. And into that context, a photograph went up showing a young child surrounded by luxury goods worth more than most people's annual salary. Sykes identified it as part of a commercial operation. Richard Fitzwilliams, speaking on GB News, called the pattern of back-of-head photography very curious. The face is protected, he noted. The brand window is not. Earlier this spring, As Ever briefly published size charts on its website that some observers interpreted as the groundwork for a children's clothing line. The charts were pulled within days, but not before screenshots were taken and circulated. Whether that reading is correct or not, the watching is already happening. The audience is already connecting dots. And when the next move involves a 4-year-old photographed inside a closet full of designer pieces the week a children's safety speech is delivered to the WHO, the dots become very easy to connect. Now step back further, because this story is not just about one photograph or one speech.
By suggesting that Meghan Markle is the antithesis of the icon that she thinks she is. She is the grandiose narcissist who displays of self-worship are now and always have been farcical, and she zoomed in on the faces of those watching.
It is about a pattern of positioning that has been building for months, and the tension inside that pattern is becoming harder to ignore. The Reggio Emilia honor was real. The endorsement was real. Dr. Tedros handing over that field vest was a genuine gesture from a global health institution that does not distribute those gestures lightly. The 50 families who flew to Geneva and stood in that square, their grief was real, their losses were documented, and the memorial they stood around represents something that matters beyond any single person's brand narrative. None of that is in dispute. None of it should be dismissed. But the messenger and the message are now in a documented tension, and that tension was not created by critics. It was created by the decisions made inside the Sussex operation in the 19 hours between Saturday night in Montecito and Sunday morning in Geneva. Tom Sykes did not manufacture that tension. He observed it, documented it, time-stamped it, and published it. The receipts are his. The timeline is theirs. Harry's podcast appearance with Hassan Minhaj in October last year is the piece of this story that keeps getting buried, and it should not be.
Fascinating thing about all of this is that actually maybe deep down Meghan realizes people don't care about her anymore. They don't engage with her anymore. The thing they do care about is her daughter.
Meghan does not show the children's faces, and so that therefore this is somehow their privacy is being protected. It's completely absurd, frankly, because what Meghan is doing by not showing the faces, or by revealing them very slowly, by revealing side portions or half portions, is feeding what marketers call a curiosity gap.
Sitting on a microphone, in his own words, Harry described social media as operating in lawlessness. He said there is no free will on it as it currently stands. He said the people running these platforms want to farm children's mindsets and profit from them. He called those people evil. He called them wicked. Those words are on the record, on a published podcast, under his own name. 7 months later, the platform those words were aimed at owned by the man. Those words were aimed at was the platform his wife used to post a photograph of their 4-year-old daughter, surrounded by $250,000 in designer goods, the night before she told the show that children deserve to be safe by design. Mama's little helper was the caption. That was Saturday. Children must be safe by design, not safe by chance was Sunday. Both are documented. Both are public. Both belong to the same household, and the gap between them is not a gap that criticism created. It is a gap the household created and criticism simply measured. So what does any of this actually mean for the cause itself? Because that is the part that gets lost when the conversation collapses into personal criticism. The Lost Screen Memorial is not a PR stunt. The 50 families who contributed to it did not do so for anyone's brand. The The children represented on those light boxes, their lock screen photos frozen at the time of their passing, were real people who deserved better from every platform, every algorithm, and every adult in a position to do something about it.
The incentives are all to keep kids online for as long as possible, to farm and process your thinking, your thoughts, and just literally keep you there for as long as possible so they can make as much money as possible. Yeah. Just acknowledge the reality of the fact that there's some really evil, wicked people at the heart of this who want to farm our children's mindset and market it for themselves. There is no free will on social media as it stands.
You know what she's doing there, right? She's talking about her own trolling, because that's what this is all about. Mark my words, she wants a censored internet. Dr. Tedros was despicable when it came to censorship of big tech platforms during COVID, trying to shut down people like me telling the truth. And that is what Meghan wants. It is actually gross that she is using grieving parents in this way. But I can't take a word that she says seriously about children and online permissions, given the way that she merged her own daughter 24 hours before this speech.
The cause is urgent. The data on social media harm to young people is not ambiguous. Researchers, pediatricians, child psychologists, and lawmakers across multiple countries are sounding the same alarm, and the WHO giving that cause a platform in Geneva is genuinely significant. What the photograph does, and this is Sykes's core argument, is hand ammunition to everyone who wants to dismiss the cause by discrediting the messenger. Every time someone wants to wave away the conversation about children and social media, they now have a time-stamped Instagram post to point at. The messenger handed them the weapon the night before the speech. That is the damage not to Meghan's reputation alone, but potentially to the credibility of the cause she was there to amplify. That is a real cost, and it is a cost that 50 grieving families cannot afford, because they did not fly to Geneva to be footnotes in a brand narrative. They flew there because their children are gone, and they want something to change.
Profit over people. You're putting profit over the privacy of your own daughter. So just zip it. Zip it with your faux politician act. I guess 4-year-old Lily didn't seek out her starring role in selling Meghan's outfit either, did she?
Why is Meghan Markle speaking at an event for bullying? She's the bully. She's literally the biggest bully. You can even see her face sometimes when she has to interact with someone who's poor. She's like disgusted. She looks disgusted having to hug people who don't live in massive mansions in Montecito like her. She seems absolutely disgusted.
The @Meghan account is still up. The photograph is still there. 4.5 million people have scrolled past it. Comments remain disabled, which means the public cannot respond directly, cannot ask questions, cannot push back on the framing. The conversation about that photograph has to happen everywhere except the account that posted it, and that is by design too. What happens next is genuinely unclear. The @Meghan and @AsEver accounts will keep operating. The content strategy will keep running. Whether the children's apparel angle materializes or not, the commercial architecture is in place and the audience is there. Sykes will keep writing. The British press will keep noting. And the 50 families who stood in that square in Geneva will keep carrying something the Instagram algorithm will never be able to measure. The closet photograph is the picture this story leaves you with. Tom Sykes named it. The timestamp locked it in. And somewhere between the Primo Tricolore in Italy, the field vest in Geneva, and the Manolo Blahniks on the floor of a Montecito closet, there is a question about what this week was actually for, and who it was actually serving.
And if she's so concerned with their safety, so concerned with protecting them, why doesn't she just simply not post them at all? People dissect her children, they make all sorts of comments, and I would say some of them are rather inappropriate. But Meghan continues to feed it, and that is disgusting. She is her children's greatest protector, and she serves them up to the internet, I think, on a silver platter because she herself is addicted to social media. She loves social media. She loves the internet. But the internet is not as nice to her as she wants it to be. And so her goal is to change the internet to better suit Meghan Markle and nobody else.
That question does not have a clean answer, but it has a record, and the record is not going anywhere. So here is where we hand it over to you, because this story is bigger than any one take, and the people watching this have lived through enough to know that the truth usually lives somewhere in the middle of a mess like this one. Does the photograph belong with the speech, or does it work against everything the speech was trying to say? Does the cause survive the messenger, or does the messenger compromise the cause? And what does it mean when the silence from the people involved is louder than anything they have actually said? Drop your verdict in the comments. Every single one gets read, and this conversation is one worth having out loud. If this story made you stop and think, hit that like button. It makes a real difference in getting these stories in front of more people who care about what is actually going on. Share this with someone who needs to see the full picture, not just the headline. The financial architecture behind the content strategy is a story on its own, and it is coming. Drop your answer in the comments below. This conversation has been seriously good, and we want to hear exactly what you think. If you found this breakdown useful, hit the like button. It genuinely helps more people find this content. Share this one with someone who has been following the story closely. Subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. See you in the next one.